All right, hello everyone, and welcome back to the Sports Lovers Podcast. I'm your host Brock, and as always, I have my co-host Hunter. Hunter, how are you doing today?
Oh, Brock, I'm doing really well. I'm doing really well. Thank you for having me here. I'm excited to talk some college football today.
Me too. Now we just got on Tuesday night, we got our first batch of the college football playoff rankings. Real quick, I wanted to say that there's three ranking systems in college football. We have the college football playoff rankings. We have the AP Associated Press rankings and the coaches rankings. We're not really going to focus on the coaches rankings, but here we're focusing on college football playoff rankings, which is in college football, there's only four teams that make the playoffs. And those right now, I'm not going to name all of them. We're going to focus on like the top, like, I don't know, like 10 teams roughly here. And that is right now Tennessee comes in at number one, Ohio State is number two, Georgia three, and Clemson four. So if the season ended, today, Tennessee would play Clemson, and Ohio State would play Georgia, and then whoever the winners of that game would then play for the national championship. And underneath that, those teams are number five Michigan and number six Alabama, number seven TCU, eight is Oregon, nine is USC, and 10 is LSU. And this is just the first week. We still have a couple, like six or so, maybe a little less weeks of college football ahead of us. My first question for my co-host is, what is like the first thing that jumps out to you with these rankings?
First thing is I'm really happy that Tennessee is number one because they absolutely deserve that number one ranking. They have, in my opinion, definitely the best resume right now in college football. Two really big wins. They have a win over LSU, who's currently number 10, and they also have a win over Alabama, who is number six. So probably the two biggest wins in college football this year for a team. So I like Tennessee at number one. Ohio State, Georgia, Clemson, I'm fine with where they're at. Michigan, I'm fine with where they're at. I do think, though, Alabama number six, I don't think they should be ahead of TCU, sir. TCU,
Oh,
undefeated, have two really good wins over Oklahoma State and Kansas State, both of whom are currently ranked in the college football playoff. Alabama has, of course, they lost to Tennessee, which is, they're the number one team in the country. That's understandable.
yeah.
But Alabama's signature win this year is over Texas, number 24 Texas, who's 5-3. Alabama beat them by 1 point. It's their signature win, and they said, you know what? That's a better resume than TCU, who hasn't even lost yet. I don't know. I disagree personally. Could be a little bit of that SEC bias that the college football playoff has a little bit, but TCU they'll find a way to prove themselves. I believe in TCU.
Yeah, I I'm in a similar vein with Alabama. I actually was surprised that they weren't in the top four personally, just because there is a lot of conference biased and kind of like brand biased, if you will. It's Alabama. Nick Saban has dominated college football for pretty much our entire lifetimes, it seems. So I feel like unless they win, unless they like lose three games, you know, in my opinion, I think they should be eligible or a contender for the national championship. Again, that's biased, that's brand biased, but I was definitely thinking like Clemson is also a big surprise to me. Like they're undefeated, and that's also it's Dabo Sweeney, it's Clemson. They've won the national championship twice. That's also some brand bias. But I would say I mean they have some good wins. Again, they have wins over ranked opponents like at Wake Forest, and they just beat Syracuse. But they haven't looked as strong as some of these other teams. And that's kind of at this point in the rankings, I feel like that's kind of what it boils down to is like, does this team look as strong as the other team? And I think I see what you're saying when it comes to like TCU should be ranked higher than Bama, but I was like, if you told me TCU and Bama were going to play, I'd say like Bama's probably going to win by like three touchdowns or something. But and to be fair, there's a lot of games I called this year where I was like, Alabama wins this easy, and they either don't win it easy or they don't win at all. So I can see that. Um, do you think these rankings matter right now, or is it just like just the start?
I do think they matter. One thing I do want to touch on real quick. You said about Clemson kind of not passing the eye test a little bit.
Yeah.
I do agree with that. Although they do have some decent wins, like you said, Wake Forest, Syracuse, NC State. They haven't looked great, but they're just getting by right now. I mean, 8-0, and I guess they deserve to belong there, but um, yeah, Clemson certainly doesn't pass the eye test. But I do think these rankings do matter, just because um, they first ranking of the year really dictates the last few weeks of the season. Because now, when you look at it, since Clemson, Clemson technically has 3 wins over currently ranked opponents in the college football playoff. Um, they're all fairly lowly ranked. That's Wake Forest, NC State, Syracuse, and matters because that's 3 ranked wins. And otherwise, it may not be 3 ranked wins. I'm not sure where in the AP poll those teams stand currently. But of course, obviously, the selection committee likes those teams enough, and that's enough to get Clemson to number 4. And that's enough if Clemson runs the table, they're a guaranteed lock into the college football playoff. Um, Matters for a team like Alabama. So Alabama lost to Texas, or excuse me, they beat Texas by 1, who is currently ranked. They're the only 3-loss team currently in the rankings. Um, and they also play currently number 10 LSU, which is, in my opinion, very generous of them to
Yes.
give LSU the number 10 spot.
Yes.
But if Alabama wins that game, then it's like, hey, we beat the number 10 team in the country. We obviously deserve to be up here. Um, so I think they do matter for that specific reason, because it helps bolster a lot of these teams' resumes currently.
Yeah, those are some good points. Right now, number 20, 21, and 22 is Syracuse, Wake Forest, and NC State. So, Clemson wins over teams in the college football playoff. I If I had to say if they matter or they don't matter, I would usually say that they don't matter, cuz I'm like, people, you know, if they had put Tennessee, Ohio, or sorry, if they had put Tennessee, Georgia, and Alabama in, people would be freaking out like, how can 3 teams from the SEC make it? But it's like, well, they haven't made it yet. We still have all this time. Usually, typically, uh, this is what it looks like now. Well, it could look completely different, 5 weeks from now. So, it matters in the case of, like, things are taking shape. Clemson, they're in that number 4 spot. They'll make it if they just win out. In theory, they shouldn't be. If they win out, they win the ACC championship. You really, under no fair reason, could just say, actually, you're not going to make it. So, yeah, now you're kind of locked into that 4 spot again if you run the table. So that's really helpful for them. Um, do you think there's any chance TCU can make the playoffs?
I do think so. They have a pretty favorable schedule to end the year. Their biggest game left on the schedule is Texas. They also play Baylor, Iowa State, but they're all certainly winnable games for TCU. And then they would play right now in the Big 12 championship. I believe it would be TCU and Kansas State, which would be a rematch, which
Yes.
TCU already won this year. I mean, I think it'd be really, really difficult to say, hey, TCU, you're 13-0, 12 conference champions. You've got a couple good wins this year: Oklahoma State, Kansas State potentially twice, Texas. Oh, no, you're not getting in. It's gonna be if they run the table, say, I mean, there's a lot of different scenarios that could happen. Especially with having Tennessee, Georgia, Alabama all currently ranked above them. There is a potential that those 3 teams all finish with either 12 or 11 wins. Then it's like, hey, these teams would probably be favored over TCU if they played right now. That's how are you going to say no to the 13-0 team that has good wins?
Yeah.
They have solid wins, but oh, it would be a real shame, but it could certainly happen. I really hope it doesn't, but there is a potential that plays out where TCU gets left out at the number 5 spot somehow, something like that.
Yeah, it is tough. I think they're really hoping for you know a couple teams to have some kind of historic collapse. That would really boost their chances because I agree with you. Like a lot of these teams, I'm taking over TCU that are above them. I meant to say this earlier, real quick. I do also agree. Like I do think Tennessee should be number one. I just wanted to say that real quick. I agree with that. But yeah, it is possible. But they're just like really hoping for a miracle. And I was also going through like so again, barring some insane collapse, like I said, I believe either Ohio State or Michigan will make it. Like one of those two teams is going to win it. They're going to have that big game, coming up here at the end of the season, and I believe that will probably decide who goes. And I honestly think like it should be like that. And if you win your conference championship, like maybe you deserve to go, and the team you beat should maybe be left out. This would be the perfect time, for the expanded playoffs, but we're gonna have to wait at least a year or two on that. I hope they do it next year, honestly.
Yeah, there's definitely there's a lot of buzz around that 12-team playoff, and I think honestly we kind of need it because I would say Tennessee's the favorite currently to win the national championship. Ohio State looks pretty good. Georgia won last year, and they're 8-0 right now. They still look good. You know, Clemson, you just never know.
Hmm.
Alabama has been good for 15 years. You never know with them. TCU could figure it out and surprise everybody. They could go on. There could be some of these one-loss teams like a USC who has a lot of talent that could just figure it out. And I think they really need that 12-team playoff now because for instance, Ohio State and Michigan are going to play right at the end of the season. They're in the same division in their conference in the Big Ten, so they can't play each other in the Big Ten championship. So really, whoever wins that game between those two is almost a lock to get into the college football playoff because the Big Ten West is not very good. It'll likely, although, Illinois, currently number 16, likely going to go to the Big Ten championship because they're in the West. Uh, hey, Illinois could be sneaky.
Yeah,
Be sneaky, Brock. You never know.
yeah. That I another thing I wanted to get to. You sort of started with this was like, um, this year I have not been very kind to the Pac-12, and now they've surprised us with SC and UCLA and Oregon all playing really
Yeah.
well. I It helps that they've lost early, but again, it just seems like there's not enough room for a team like that to make it. The Pac-12 is definitely on the outside looking in big time. Like, I mean, TCU is hoping for a miracle. Like, UCLA and Oregon and them, they are just like they're hoping for again something historical. I'm just gonna say it again, some kind of historical collapse.
It would be for Oregon's sake. So they're 7-1. They're the number 8 team right now. Their only loss this year is to Georgia in Week 1, where they Georgia handled them
Yes.
easily in Week 1. It's also that's an early loss. It's really hard to say those are both different teams now. They've both improved, especially Oregon since that time. Um, Oregon could very well win out and go 12-1. They still have a couple of good games left. They've got Utah, and they also have Oregon State, who's currently ranked number 23, left on their schedule, plus a Big 12 championship game. They already have a win over UCLA. How do you look at Oregon and say, yeah, you guys lost to a team there's a really good shot of going to the college football playoff. Unfortunately, you're just not good enough with your
Yeah.
one unfortunate loss, and you've got 3, 4 really good wins.
Yeah.
It really, I think we desperately need that 12-team playoff because it sucks to It happens every year. The number 5 team, the number 6 team that go 11-1, 12-1, 11-2, something like that.
Yeah.
And they got hot the last half of the season and they have big wins, but they can't get into the playoff because, oh, you guys lost in week 2 or week 1 or week 3. And unfortunately, that can just be killer for a lot of these teams.
Yeah, I definitely think Oregon has. I think Oregon's a different team now since that week one loss. It would be ironic if somehow, like, if Oregon wins out but they don't let them in, but Georgia kind of falls off, and we just see a rematch of Georgia Oregon, but this time in the bowl game. That'd be pretty ironic.
Will be.
Yeah, that LSU being ranked 10. That's 6-2, like very generous. Like very
Extremely,
generous.
yes. I don't really get it. Looking at their resume,
They beat Ole Miss.
their big win is Ole Miss, who is 8-1 currently.
Hmm.
But Ole Miss does not have a signature win. They have a signature loss, and that's to LSU.
Yeah,
Um, LSU lost to Tennessee, which is respectable. LSU also lost to Florida State to open the year, who is not a good team.
no,
Florida State is not good this year. They haven't been good for a while. They lost to Florida State. Why are they ranked number 10? Their resume does not say any way they should be that high. Even with Ole Miss, they don't have any good wins this year. They have a loss to LSU. And LSU handled Ole Miss,
yeah.
by the way. It was not a close
Right
game.
from the start, that Tennessee LSU game was like just over.
Yeah, over right away. Uh, I mean, honestly, the most impressive two-loss team right now is, at least in my opinion, probably Kansas State. They had a big win over Oklahoma State, and they have two losses, but they're two pretty decent losses. One to TCU, one to Tulane. At least they have a resume,
Yeah,
unlike LSU or Ole Miss. So I'm really surprised, but something that could also mess us up. Say LSU plays Alabama. I believe this coming
this
weekend they
Saturday.
play
Yep, yep.
Alabama. What happens if LSU wins? They're 7-2. It's going to be like, okay, well, are they going to jump up in those rankings, or are they going to bump up a spot or two, and Alabama's going to fall back down? But I
Yeah,
think Alabama's way better than Ole Miss as well. So I don't know. It's a little messy with the SEC. The SEC bias is right now is a little much for LSU and Ole Miss.
yeah. And I was about to bring that up too. Like if LSU beats Alabama this Saturday, um, that would again I'd be like that's generous, but I guess that worked out because they just beat Alabama. Then who's going to the SEC championship? Would they? I have a feeling they would probably put LSU like they'd probably jump TCU and Oregon and all those guys. Like they'd probably go right into that fifth or fourth spot. Again, depending on the wins or losses, and it's all about we have seen some very big blowouts in the college football playoffs.
So we have a lot.
So I think over time the committee is trying to just be more like who really is the best team and who are the best teams. And I was a little annoyed a few years back, or I guess this was last year. Well, this has happened a few times actually, but Georgia and Alabama have both, you know, gone to the college football playoffs, in the same year. So that's two SEC teams taking two spots that could have gone to other conferences. But I mean, I feel like I just have to be fair in that you can't ignore what's happened over the past few years. I remember one year Alabama was left out of the playoffs, and then they played Michigan in a bowl game, and it was just like, no competition. It was just over and done with.
Yeah. I mean, there's certainly the SEC does get the best talent. They consistently a lot of their teams recruit really well year in and year out. And I don't think we should fault them for that. But I listened to Joel Klatt today talk about the committee needs to only look at this particular season because there are times when know they you look at it with Alabama's currently number 6, which I think is pretty fair generally. I do think TCU should be ahead of them, but I think 6 is pretty fair. Um, but they, having Clemson at 4 when they haven't really looked all that impressive. I would say Michigan has maybe a slightly worse resume, but they have a better win. They just have passed the eye test a little more than Clemson has. But Clemson has had that previous success, which I think really is why they're ranked ahead of Michigan right now because of winning a national championship recently and just being in the top 4 very consistently for the last handful of years. I think sometimes their sight is set in the past a little bit,
Yeah.
and that is unfortunate. But I do understand at the same time uh, why you would do that because you want the best teams there year in and year out, and it's hard to say that you know for instance, Oregon, they're 7-1. I think every other team in the top 10 would be favored to beat TCU right now. You know, TCU's number 7 and 8. No, I think every single team, including LSU, would be favored to beat a TCU.
Yeah.
That's, you know, I think you just have to look at the resume, look at what they've done, and say, hey, obviously TCU hasn't played any of these teams, but we have to look at just this year, just what they've done in these first 8, 9 weeks of the season, and base it off of that. I don't think we can look at anything else, at least especially early on in these rankings. We really can't look at anything else other than their current resumes, and that is not the case. I don't believe very often with the college football playoff.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember when was this? I want to say 2014. I can't remember off the top of my head, but the Big 12 didn't even have a Big 12 championship. Do you remember that? And
Yeah, they just had started that recently.
yeah, in TCU, I remember watching TCU and Iowa State, and Iowa State was not very good. And this was TCU's game to try to get into the playoffs. Was a regular season just complete, trounce of Iowa State, and that left them out of the playoffs. That left a couple teams out of the playoffs, so the Big 12 had to create a Big 12 championship. So it would just be like all these years later, it's like TCU's undefeated. They've got a good chance of winning the Big 12 championship, and they do, and then they still can't get in. You're kind of like sitting here like, what do we have to do? And I mean, in this year, there's a little bit more of like a very large talent pool. I think a lot of these teams are very good, and I do like the college football playoffs despite the. I mean, we've had a lot of blowouts. Usually, there's only one good game each year, one or two maybe. Now, to be fair, some of those games end up being some of the best games in college football history. Definitely like Georgia and Oklahoma. That'll be
Mhm.
remembered as one of the best games in college football history. But I think it's better that we have this system, as opposed to the previous system. I think now we just need more spots. In the NFL, you can lose 2 games, and you don't want to, but you got a whole season ahead of you to figure this out. Whereas in college
Exactly.
football, it seems like if you lose 2 games, you just kiss your national championship, aspirations goodbye.
Exactly. Yeah, I don't think there's not a two-loss team currently that has any shot unless absolute chaos occurs and all the top 6 lose at least one game, maybe 2 games. It's the only way any two-loss team would get in currently. Um, the FCS has a 16 team playoff. I believe it's 16 team playoff, and they've been doing that for years, and it works beautifully. I don't really know why it's taken so long for the FBS to I mean, it took long enough to transition to the 14 playoff.
Yeah,
Um, Now they're going to the 12 team playoff, which is fine. I think 16 would have been cool personally, but 12 is cool as well because realistically, there's probably not 16 teams that truly have a real chance at winning a championship, but there
yeah,
could be 12.
yeah.
There's the potential for that.
I think I kind of wish they had done like baby steps. Like first we did 4, and then we did 6, and then we can do 12. But maybe it's better to just like we're just jumping right to 12. Um,
I'm very excited for that because there will also be teams hosting home games for the first round of the college football playoff with that, which will be really cool.
you read my mind. That's exactly what I was gonna say next. Was I think the idea of a home college football playoff game is like I that sounds amazing. Like I think that is just what have you been waiting for? We got to get some home college football playoff games.
Yes, electric.
Yes, but the only thing I was wondering is like, I mean, it sounds ridiculous to say, are people going to show up? Because, I mean, they're going to, but it's also like, around this time, people are going home for, you know, their winter breaks, their whatever to see their family back to where, if they came from out of state or wherever it is. I would just be interested to see, like, uh, with a playoff game, like, are the crowds still going to be there?
Yeah, I know what you mean because students are often on their winter break at the time of when the college football playoff is happening. Even at the end of the season, sometimes the last home game of the year, sometimes those student sections don't fill up because they're back home. Now, if it's a home playoff game like that, I think they will definitely, no
Yeah.
matter what, they'll come back to town,
Yeah.
even if it's for a weekend for it. Um, uh, One thing I really like about hosting home playoff games, and I think they should host them at least through the semifinals of it, and I wouldn't even be opposed to the national championship being a home game for
Oh
somebody
my. Oh my
because
goodness.
there's been a lot of talk about people saying, well, if we expand to 12 teams, then you know the regular season does not matter. And if you include home games throughout the entirety of the college football playoff, the regular season now matters. Yeah, if you go 10-2, you might get in. You're gonna have to play on the road though the whole way, and you're
Yeah.
really gonna have to persevere.
Yeah.
But if you go 12-0 or 12-1 or 11-1, and you get to host a game or two, or you get to host the whole way through, that's so rewarding to be able to say, "Hey, we ran the table this year in college football. We're gonna play four straight home games all the way through the championship," and I think that's how you bring back the regular season truly mattering at the 12 team playoffs still.
Yeah, that's a good point. Um, what was I gonna say? What is it? Do you think maybe there's a problem with like the venues, maybe with like having that many teams playing, or is it maybe I don't know how much of that would go into an account, but
I mean, there's definitely teams in the NCAA and the universities want to make money. That's kind of their number one goal. Now, being if they are home games, the universities are making more money off of that, which is good for the universities and for the players. Um, you know, it's just kind of been the standard to play at a neutral site for the most part for any playoff games and forever really.
yeah,
And I understand why don't necessarily want there to be advantages for certain teams, in these circumstances playing in a championship game being at home or anything like that. I do think that the venues should be able to handle it if they can handle a full regular season, if they can handle, you know, playing big games already at their stadiums. I mean, this would be to a different level because if it's a national championship, I mean, we live by Penn State. We know the traffic standard home game brings. I
yeah,
can't even imagine how much worse it would be if it was a playoff game or a championship game of that matter. It would just be significantly worse. I'd be fine with it.
yeah,
I know I myself would be okay about it because it'd be cool for the community and it'd be cool for the universities to be able to host these.
yeah. I I think that idea of hosting a national championship game is like that's really fun and really cool, but I don't know if it's ever a realistic thing. Like I think they would probably always play that at a neutral site.
Yeah, most likely, yeah.
Yeah. But hosting one, yeah, that would be crazy. But I do think like, I mean, yeah, it's all about money. As long as people buy tickets, you don't care what they're for, as long as they spend money on the tickets. But it is kind of like you want both fan bases to be prevalent
Mhm.
and known. Whereas like, if there's a home game at Beaver Stadium, it's mostly Penn State fans, and then like up in this little corner is the away fans, and sometimes they take up a big part of that corner, but still, it's like you'd want to have a good seat for that.
Yeah,
So
that's fair. But hey, they do it in the MLB. They do
Yeah,
it in the NBA.
yeah,
Don't do it for the Super Bowl. They go to a neutral site, except for last year when the
yeah,
Rams got to play at home technically,
yeah. Well, oh, it
which was
was
just kind of luck of the draw.
yeah, it was 2 times in a row because Tampa played. They hosted the
That's right.
game. Yeah, so I don't know. Maybe you could do the same thing and just say, well, I don't know. Stadiums are much different in college. Yeah, I don't know. That's a whole different thing.
Yeah,
But
it is a little different. A lot of NFL stadiums are they're different, but they're general. They have a lot of similarities and a lot of standards that have to be the same across the board. Where in college, there's a lot of different types of
yeah,
stadiums out
oh
there
yeah.
that you can play on.
And I respect each team and having their home field advantage as well as like I don't know maybe even if you want to call it a weather advantage. But I also understand and respect why they pick games. They pick these big games like the Super Bowl and the national championship. They usually pick it where it's warm, and so I understand why they want it in a dome. I don't want to see a big game like that kind of ruined by weather or slowed down by weather because it's like imagine if like a Penn State or a Michigan or Minnesota, a team like that hosts a game, and there's just a blizzard. There's just this monster blizzard. You have all these people trying to show up for a national championship game, and the whole place is just snowed out. Uh,
See, that's what I want. That's what I want to
okay.
see. I want to
Okay.
see Minnesota. I want to see Minnesota host like Florida or Miami
Oh man.
in January.
Uh,
I want it to be like -10 degrees. That's what I want. That's
oh
my
jeez.
dream
That's your
dream national
dream.
championship.
Oh man.
A game at Michigan at the Big House
The
and USC
the worst
and
great the
you.
weather of the Great Lakes is coming down on them.
Yes, it's snow is coming down. You can't even see the players. You can't see the stands, but they have to play. You have to deal with it. That's It'll show us the true national
Oh
championship.
man. That yeah, and what the score is gonna be like? Whoever gets one touchdown probably wins the game. You happen
It'll
to
be like
run it
six to
in.
two.
Yeah, 6-2.
Can't can't
Somehow
kick the ball.
can't kick
Can't
the
do anything.
ball. You go to kick that point after and you miss it. The snow's right in your eyes. Yeah,
Can't see the ball.
that sounds great. I gotta tell you, that sounds
That's
amazing.
my dream,
Yeah,
Brock.
that's
That's
your
my dream.
dream. Yes, I have to keep that detail in mind. It's your dream.
Hmm.
Oh man, I wanted to say real quick. Point I forgot to bring up earlier with the fans being there. Now these are two completely different, you know, sports and scenarios. But I remember watching Miami Hurricanes were in the basketball team was in what's the not the NCAA tournament. What's the other
The
uh,
conference tournament.
after the conference tournament? If you don't make the NCAA tournament,
Oh,
sometimes you go to the
yeah. Oh my gosh. I'm blanking. I don't know why.
yeah.
Yeah. I know what you're talking about though. It'll hit me in a second.
Does it
Yeah.
start with an I?
Oh my gosh, this is gonna bug me. Hold on. I'm gonna find it real quick because
Yeah.
that's gonna.
Well, whatever it was, as soon as you find it out, you can say it. But the NIT,
Yes, the NIT. That's what it's
okay,
called. I kept thinking NIA and I was like, that's not it. I know
NIA,
it's not it.
yeah, they Miami Hurricanes basketball, they were in the NIT and they hosted a game in the NIT tournament. And I remember watching it and like it was pretty quiet, and I was like, dude, where is everybody? Like, usually Miami basketball gets pretty good crowds, and the NIT isn't the most important thing, but it's still basketball. And it was just, I think it was just that everyone was home on like vacation. I can't remember exactly, but whenever it was during a big break, and people were like, "I'm gonna go home." Now again, basketball, college basketball is very popular, very important, but like those are two different things. I think people love football. People probably show up for football.
Yeah, I know a similar thing actually happened to Penn State like 10, 15 years ago. I think it was bad weather though, which was a lot of the students came and there wasn't like almost anybody else there for
Yeah.
their NIT home game. Uh,
Oh yeah. Okay.
it was pretty crazy, but I think it was bad weather, which is why the crowd wasn't really there.
Yeah. Did you have any early? Did you want to make some kind of like way too early prediction? Was there any like?
Way too early predictions. I think
I guess it's not way too early, but like this is the
yeah, I
first
guess it's not way too
rankings.
early.
But
My gut tells me Tennessee's been really good. My gut tells me they've had such a hard schedule. It's hard to keep winning, especially in the SEC. My heart's telling me Georgia's going to beat them, and then, but I'm really hoping they sneak in. Ohio State, Michigan is a toss-up right now. Oh my gosh, you know, the power of Michigan versus just the consistency and skill and finesse of Ohio State.
Hmm.
Uh, One of those two teams is going to get in, potentially both if everything works out. I think Clemson has a really good shot at making the playoff. Right now, I'd say Georgia, Clemson. Is the is Do you know if is Michigan or Ohio State? Do you know who's the home team this year?
It's Ohio State.
Ohio State. Oh boy, give Ohio State a slight edge currently just because they're at home. We'll go Georgia, Ohio State, Clemson, TCU,
Yes.
number four.
Yeah. I I will be honest, I have been a Tennessee hater for a while just because I feel like for the last maybe not 10 years, but maybe the last like 6 years or so, I feel like every year we start the season they go Tennessee's back, baby. This is their year, and they get destroyed in all their big games. I
Mhm.
feel like that's happened, and this year I said the same thing. I was like, "Oh, Tennessee, they're back. No big deal." Well, I'm with them this year. The great win against Alabama. I'm taking them over Georgia. I say they're gonna go number one. They win out. I'm gonna say Ohio State. I think I think they're just better than Michigan. I think rivalry games are different. You know that's a whole new atmosphere. But I think Ohio State wins out and they take that one. And then I'm gonna go hot take right now. I'm gonna say Clemson falls off. Either um,
To play Notre Dame.
they got a big game against Notre Dame this Saturday, and maybe they fall off in the if not that then I'm gonna say in the championship. I think they fall to North Carolina.
Carolina,
If it
yeah.
is North Carolina, I'm predicting North Carolina Clemson.
Yeah, it's very, very likely it'll be North Carolina. Yeah,
So I'm gonna call that.
baby.
So then who moves up there? So I got Tennessee, Ohio State. I don't know. I don't think we can get past the SEC biased. So I'm gonna say Georgia takes the next spot, and then I'm gonna go with you and go all in on the TCU Horned Frogs as well. They get to
You Horned Frogs.
They get to sneak in there at the end of the season. So I got Tennessee, Ohio State, Georgia, TCU. In our
I like it. I think TCU's got a great shot. They have a favorable schedule. They'll likely have to play Kansas State again if they win out, and they've already beat them once. They can beat them again. Uh, my two super sneaky underdogs here.
Okay.
One's North Carolina.
Oh man!
The other, extremely sneaky, is Illinois. Illinois.
Wow!
They gotta play Michigan still.
Wow!
That's power versus power, baby. If they beat Michigan, they gotta play Ohio State. And if you're like, hey, Illinois beat Michigan and Ohio State, yeah, they lost to, I think they lost to like Indiana, but we can forget about that.
Yeah.
We don't need to worry about that. Give me Illinois in, in the college football
Oh
playoff.
my gosh!
My sneaky, you never know what can happen team.
Yeah, I guess so. Wow. North Carolina. The problem with North Carolina is that they give up like 100 points every game. Like every single game is a shootout with them. I don't know. I don't know what's more. I guess it's more unlikely that Illinois makes it. But both of those, if one of those
Great.
two teams go, I'll have to buy you a lottery ticket or something like.
If I would
That
definitely
is
put my
nuts.
money on North Carolina figuring it out more than Illinois.
Oh my
But
gosh.
UNC, they put up points. They also give up
A ton.
every possible point, but it's fun. It's the beauty of college football, baby.
Yeah. I can't believe I didn't pick Alabama, but I decided to go with, what looked good to me, and
Hey,
that's what I got right
this every year can't be your year. Bama, it's not your year. Not your year. TCU's coming. They're gonna overtake you in the standings because they're gonna go undefeated. It's gonna
Yeah.
happen.
I think I'm trying to look up all the team schedules right now and see. Well, okay, yeah, Alabama could lose to LSU. And then they do go. Alabama also goes on the road to Mississippi or to Ole Miss.
Hmm.
Man, and they need to. This is the worst part of college football. Okay, Alabama hosts Austin Peay. It's like, dude,
Yeah.
near the end of the season, just get rid of that. That's the annoying thing about college football is like, right now the problem is the margin for error is so low. So many teams, they don't want to have these big matchups early in the year because that really hurts your chances. So then we have a lot of these smaller teams playing. Like, there's no reason they should be playing them that late in the season. Like, that's just
No, and I mean they schedule that for a reason because it gives at the end of the year if they're in position to make the playoff, it gives them an easy team to beat. It gives them time to work on things, time for guys to get healthy, things like that. It's smart.
yeah.
It's annoying. It certainly is.
But they can
which
do
is
it,
why
so-
we need a commissioner.
Yes, sir.
This is why we need to fix all of this so it's not super random. Some teams have 4 non-conference, some have 3. Some teams play Austin PA or PV.
I don't even know how to say it. I don't even know where that university is. I assume
I don't know.
somewhere in Texas, but I don't know.
That's why we're rooting for TCU.
Yeah, and yeah, Alabama 2 road games. Then they host Auburn at the very end of the season. Again, a rivalry game, but not likely that they lose that game. I mean, like, Auburn just fired their coach, so
Sometimes that lights a fire in a
Sounds
team, though.
yeah,
You never know.
yeah. Yeah, TCU's really hoping for at least 2 or 3 more losses from those big teams, but I'm going with Tennessee, Ohio State, Georgia, and a very lucky, happy TCU team just swinging in there. The Big 12, I don't think. Oh no, Georgia, yeah, or not Georgia, but Oklahoma's gone to the
Yeah,
playoffs.
Oklahoma's down this year,
3
yeah.
times, I think they've gone. They went twice
Yes,
with
and
Baker
there's-
Mayfield and once with Kyler Murray.
Yeah, with Kyler Murray. I don't believe Baylor ever made it. I know they were close. Oklahoma State's been close
Yeah,
a couple times too, but I'm pretty sure it's just Oklahoma that's made it from that conference.
yeah, yeah. I would agree with that because I remember it was Oklahoma with Baker Mayfield against Clemson, and it was like kind of close at the start, and then Clemson just took away that game. And then I mentioned before it was Oklahoma and Baker Mayfield against Georgia, and that was like one of the best games in college football history. And one time they went
Good
with
game.
Kyler Murray, and it was like every time they kind of got close to Bama just ran away with the game. So, yeah, I mean, exciting stuff. We'll have to take a look again as we get closer to the end of the season. I think I really like the conference championship games. I think those are important. I think that's a fun game to have at the end of the year that helps figure things out.
Yeah, it helps bolster a resume too, and it helps that team that's sitting at number 5 or number 6 if they have that big win over to win their conference championship, and maybe the number 3 team loses their conference championship, or maybe one of the teams on the outside looking in is playing a top 3 or 4 team. It just gives them that opportunity, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, so definitely get us that freaking 12-team playoff as soon as possible. I used to think like, no, 4 is fine. You don't want people rewarded for losing a game, like losing your championship. Like, do you really deserve to go if you lose your championship? But we've seen teams that don't even win their championship, they go anyway. So if it's like, well, if that's going to be how it is, then just have 12 teams and just have the best teams go. And so 12-team playoff, exciting stuff. That's about all I've got. Do you have any closing notes on the college football playoffs?
No, go TCU. Illinois. Who knows? Could shock the world. You never know.
Yeah,
The Phillies are in the World Series. Didn't think that was gonna happen.
yeah, definitely. I also did not think they were gonna make it.
You never know. Let's go Illinois.
Yeah. Oh, I do remember. I did want to bring up one final topic was like, do you think we should just have one ranking system? Because I'm kind of like, because for those also who don't know, for like the first 6 weeks of the season or however long it is, there's the AP poll, and then we follow those rankings. Then now we have the college football playoff rankings, which don't match. Though now we just focus on college football playoff rankings. That's where you're good if you're going to go to the college football playoffs. and in that one they have Clemson on the outside looking in.
Hmm. I don't really see why we don't just switch to the college football playoff, because the AP poll doesn't matter. It matters for the beginning of the season, just for ratings, really, for those top matchups early on. The coaches poll certainly does not matter
No,
at all.
no,
So, also, I don't know if you ever look at, you can see the different AP voters each week, and you can see exactly where they put teams. And every single one of them always has a bias towards whether it's their conference or towards, West Coast teams or East Coast teams, whatever it may be. Everybody has a bias. Sometimes you see, a team that's consistently ranked, sixth or seventh or eighth. Somebody might have them all the way up at two. Somebody might have them the whole way down at 19. The AP is just really no consistency with it. At least the college football playoff, they give you the reasoning for where teams are. At least they're generally pretty open about why they're ranking teams where they are, which I think is good.
yeah,
And they're the ones that matter at the end of the day. So I think we should just switch to one.
yeah. I don't really see any reason that like we just have that be the ranking. Like I don't really. There's no reason for there to be two. Because like at the end of the year, you always hear like this team finished here in the college football playoff rankings and here in the AP rankings, and it just seems there's just no reason to have two. So
I agree.
yeah, and there's also like a committee of people that pick for college football playoff rankings, and they go through apparently an extensive conversation about it. I don't know the whole. I also watched Joel Klatt today. He explained a little bit of that. Shout out to friend of the show, Joel Klatt. Just kidding. I've never talked to him before. But yeah, just have one ranking system. That's all. That's about all I got for you.
100% makes it easier. They're open and honest about it at least, and I think it's just better for college football.
Well, alrighty then. Now that's all I've got for this.
Sir.
Yeah, thanks for everybody for watching. Really appreciate all the support, feedbacks. Let us know in the comments. Who's your top four? Who do you think is going to end up at the end? Should they boost Tulane? Should Tulane be number 4? Is that the sneaky team that's going to make it as Tulane football?
Sneaky. You never know.
Yeah.
Be a lot of losses out there for some teams.
Yes, sir. Yeah. So thanks everyone for watching. I'm your host, Brock, signing off. And yeah, we will catch you guys on the next one. Peace.